In the previous episode, I told you about fear, the fear of losing my family, my friends, my identity, everything I had ever known. And I said there came a point when carrying all of that alone became impossible, that I needed some kind of way out. Today, I'm going to tell you what happened when I found that way out, and why it came with something I never expected. Stay here. There's a specific kind of loneliness that only those who have lived through it can truly understand. It's not the loneliness of being alone in a room. It's not the loneliness of having no friends or family nearby. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people you love and not being able to be honest with any of them. It's the loneliness of carrying a version of yourself that nobody around you truly knows. It's the loneliness of sitting at a full table, hearing laughter, joining conversations, and feeling like you're standing outside a glass window looking in. Physically present, truly absent. That was my reality every single day. And it was in that loneliness that I began to search. At first, it was almost accidental. A search here, a video there, a text recommended to me that I almost closed immediately out of fear of what it might say. But I didn't close it. I read it, and something inside me breathed. Just a little, just for a second. But it was enough for me to come back the next day and search for more. It was as if I had spent my entire life thirsty and suddenly found a spring that I had always been told was poisoned. And there I was, afraid to drink, but so thirsty that fear was beginning to lose the battle. I started researching in secret. That word, secret, feels heavy when I say it. Because there's something deeply disturbing about realizing that you need to hide your own search for truth, that you need to erase your browser history, that you need to close tabs quickly when someone walks by, that you need to create strategies just to access information that any human being should be able to explore freely without guilt or fear. But that was my reality. Late at night, when the house was asleep, I stayed awake, reading, watching, listening, processing. Hours and hours immersed in content that would never have space in the conversations of my everyday life. Perspectives I had never been exposed to. Questions I had never heard asked so clearly before. Stories from people who had lived through exactly what I was living through. And that last part, the stories from other people, was what broke me in a way I never expected. Because until that moment, I thought I was the only one, that there was something specifically wrong with me, that the doubts I felt were a personal weakness, a defect, a flaw in character, an inability to simply have enough faith like everyone else around me seemed to have. And suddenly, I was reading testimonies from people describing, in different words, the exact same weight I carried, the same suffocating feeling, the same fake smile, the same amen spoken without conviction, the same exhaustion from pretending, the same loneliness of not being able to be honest. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel alone. It was relief and pain at the same time. Relief because I finally had confirmation that I wasn't crazy. Pain because I realized there was an entire world full of people who, just like me, were suffering silently inside systems that left no room for doubt. But alongside the relief came something I wasn't expecting: anger. Not explosive anger, not the kind of anger that makes you want to scream or attack someone specific. It was a quiet anger, a deep one. The anger of someone who realizes they were deprived of something important for a very long time without even knowing it. The anger of realizing there were questions I could have asked years ago that there were perspectives I could have explored decades earlier, that there was a version of myself that could have existed, freer, more honest, more whole, if I had been exposed to those ideas sooner. But I hadn't, because the system I was inside was extremely good at one specific thing: creating invisible barriers around the right questions. Not physical barriers, not explicit censorship, nothing that obvious. Emotional barriers. The subtle but powerful idea that certain questions are dangerous, that certain doubts are signs of spiritual weakness, that doubt itself is an enemy to fight instead of a tool to use. And I had internalized that so deeply that it took me years to realize the barrier wasn't outside of me, it was inside me. The nights became longer and richer. I discovered thinkers I had never heard of before, philosophers whose names I had never seen mentioned in the environments I grew up in, historians who gave context to things I had always been taught to accept without context, scientists who presented evidence that directly contradicted things I had believed were absolute truth. And every discovery came with a contradictory mix of emotions: fascination, fear, relief, guilt, curiosity, shame for feeling curious. Because even alone, even late at night, even with nobody watching, I still felt guilty for searching, as if the search itself were a sin, as if questioning were betrayal, as if I were doing something forbidden simply by wanting to understand the world around me more clearly. And that told me more about the system than any theological or philosophical argument ever could. Because a system that makes you feel guilty for searching for truth is not interested in truth. It's interested in control. It took me a very long time to finally articulate that thought clearly. But when it came, when I finally managed to put into words what I had been feeling for years, something inside me changed in an irreversible way. It's like looking at one of those optical illusion drawings. At first, you only see one image. Then, someone shows you another way of seeing it. And from that moment on, you can never go back to seeing only the first image. You will always see both, and there's no going back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unlearn what you've learned. And I knew, with a certainty that filled me with peace and terror at the same time, that my road back was already closed. That I was moving forward, without fully knowing where, without knowing what I would lose along the way, but moving forward nonetheless. Months passed like that, months of living a double life. On the outside, everything looked the same: fulfilling obligations, participating in rituals, maintaining appearances, being who everyone expected me to be. On the inside, a silent and unstoppable revolution, a painful but necessary dismantling of an entire identity. But eventually, there came a day when the internal revolution became too big to stay hidden, when the actor started forgetting his lines, when the smile took 1 second too long to appear, when the people closest to me started noticing that something had changed, without knowing what. And that was when the turning point happened, the one that changed everything. Not the way I planned, not at the moment I would have chosen, the way all major turning points arrive, when you least expect them, and when you can no longer hold everything together. In the next episode, I'm going to tell you about the day I could no longer pretend, and what happened when the version inside and the version outside finally met. You're going to want to see it.